Hey guys, so we're discussing decentralized society. So it's like a very broad, panel, and we have a very diverse group of founders and investors. So we have from building a music-related, social, to infrastructure, and also developer tool infrastructure to support all these Web3 companies. And I think we will have a quite interesting conversation discussing the future of Web3, and also I guess what's like people are asking what's the definition of Web3, and also what's going to be like going forward. So I guess by way of introduction, I'm a partner at IVC. Before joining IVC, I was working for a private equity, and growth private equity in Hong Kong, and also running my family office. And I'll hand it to Joel.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you've been like bombarded with like a shit ton of panels, apologies language. But yeah, basically my background is that I've worked across edtech, fintech, sustainable fashion, failed company there, shout out to Forza, and now building in the creator economy, having worked at a creator economy startup prior to this where it was like, $100 for 30 minutes of someone's time. And guess what, kind of realized like Web3 is the new wave that's gonna fundamentally change the dynamics of the sort of creator and community relationship. Apart from that, I do vlog on the side. I have a massive subscriber base of 215 subscribers, so please feel free to check out my channel. And yeah, that's a little bit about us at Crowdpad. We're building tokenized creator communities on mobile first on top of Solana. We did a bit of a seed round, just 2.5 mil backed by IVC, FTX, Apology, and a bunch of others. So yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Hi, my name is Cheung. Thank you, IBS, for having us. So I'm the co-founder of our Happy Company, the company behind our pilot product called Our Song, which is a Web3 and then like a modern day music platform that we co-founded with John Legend. And also, fortunately, we are also backed by IVC and also any local brands as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joony Koo. I'm Joony Koo. I am co-founder and co-CEO for AO, making a Web3 game called Spacebar.
Hello, yeah, this is right. Hello, I'm Joony Koo. I am the co-CEO and co-founder for AO, making a Web3 game called Spacebar, and I am also the co-founder and co-CEO for SkyGG, which is a sub-DAO of YGG. I have been in the mobile games industry since 2006, pioneered the smartphone innovation for mobile games that come to us when I was leading their global business team. And I've jumped into crypto in 2017, pioneering anything around blockchain games. And for the last 4 years, I've been writing down anything that kind of seems interesting to try out on building while building a blockchain game. So I've written down like a 42-page document on like various hypotheses on how the decentralized blockchain games can be made. And Spacebar is a game that can experiment with all these things and basically linking up different social experiments and financial experiments, utilizing a community, and the game part is the means to the end. So that's Spacebar. And for SkyGG, it's a sub-DAO guild based in South Korea, but touching more into the esports realms on top of what YGG and its sub-DAOs are doing. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Usagi. I'm the co-founder of RSS3. So basically, RSS3 is a protocols and a network that gathering address like data and contents from different chains and different protocols and different DApps, and we provided them gathering together and provided API to the developers so they can actually easily build on RSS3 and no matter what the different kind of data they needed. And yeah, a little bit more about myself. I was born in 2001, so I'm actually 21 this year, yeah, almost 21. And
I was starting coding when I was 14, and I got dropped out from University of Auckland from computer science because it's kind of boring. After that, I was joining Artistry, co-founded it, and yeah, pretty much that was all for me. Thanks. Everyone? Oh, okay. Thank you for being here. And here's my story. I'm Guo Yu. I'm sorry, I don't have English name. You can call me Bruce. It's my Starbucks name. And I built a startup in Peking in 2014, and that company was acquired by ByteDance in 2014. And so then I worked for ByteDance for 6 years, from 2014 to 2020. And after I got my retirement, I moved to Japan to enjoy my life. And from this year earlier, I started a business called CodeforDAO, and I started a developer DAO, an exclusive developer DAO called CodeforDAO. CodeforDAO is a suite of open source projects. We have open source our contracts in Solidity and in Starknet's Cairo language, and that is a DAO suite. It's basically a set of open source contracts you can use to build your own DAO. It contains a core governance contracts, it contains a tracker, a vote contract, and it contains an aggregated membership content, and it contains a module system, which you can instance the module system to build your own, like payment, like payroll, like OKR or roadmap or something else, running on the EVM or the non-EVM ecosystem, just like Starknet. Yeah, thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you everyone for the quick introduction. In Web3 and compared to Web2, there's quite a lot of differences in terms of the users interacting with platforms, right? Before, maybe you just used US dollar, but now you're interacting with NFTs, with cryptos, with tokens, with data communities, with social, and also on music. So the behavior interactions are quite different. And so I like to throw it to the panelists to see what's your background and how is that related to products that you're building. And also, what do you see of the future of the product and also the society, and how the audience or the people are going to interact with your product?
Right. Thanks, Alex. So I think that on my background, I guess, like from making YouTube videos to working at a creator economy startup, it gives you pretty good insight into what a creator economy startup should look like. Oftentimes I see CEOs and CTOs of like startups like in this space, and the reality is that they've not really created a video in their life. Meanwhile, in the backstage, I was like vlogging, like, and like as we were coming up to the stage. So that's the difference, I guess, between people that build for creators and people that are building their version of what they think creators need. With respect to, I guess, the second part of the question, which is kind of like how the utopian, rather, version of what Crowdpad would look like, to put it with all the jargon in the world possible, because you're a very crypto-friendly audience, we see a world wherein Crowdpad evolves into Crowdpad DAOs, Crowdpad marketplaces, and Crowdpad wallets. So we have a non-custodial wallet, a native DEX, and a community building solution all in one platform, one mobile first. The way I see it spinning off is just as you have Uber Eats and Uber Rides and things like that, Crowdpad will evolve into communities and wallets and social marketplaces. That's kind of the way I see it evolving. Like, imagine if you had, so again, my name is Joel, so like, $1 Joel to kind of buy my token and then enter this sort of like marketplace wherein I can buy all the fashion designs that I put out, all of the music labels I put out, and using my social currency, which can be earned as well, as a way of buying into my community. The problem is that we outprice people when we go like, okay, you want to buy Christian Dior, you want to buy Burberry, you can only buy it if you have a lot of money. There's no way in which you can earn like Dior clout or something like that to kind of, purchase that brand and like be a part of that community. Whereas you might aspire to be in that particular kind of, you align with the sort of like values that they have and things like that, but you can't be a part of the community. So Crowdpad is building for an inclusive and sort of like, diverse and also eventually decentralized kind of community. Yeah.
Interesting. I guess like additional question on that, right? You said creators owning their own token, social token, and the supporting stats or people around it could use that to monetize. But in the end, do you see that people still want cash or dollars to to survive, right? So how do you kind of cross that and have people to believe in what you're creating that has worth something?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at platforms that have existed prior to this, you have things like BitCloud that came in, and then basically all of your tokens were like locked in. You couldn't cash out, and like that's exactly what people wanted to do. They wanted to be able to kind of monetize their social capital and then use it in the real world. But guess what? I can't today go from Dollar Joe to a cup of coffee at Starbucks. What does it take for that to happen? Regulation around stable coins to kind of come into fruition, wherein a Starbucks would accept USDC or like another national denominated kind of equivalent, right? So what we're doing at Crowdpad is providing fiat on-ramps and off-ramps to kind of ensure that you can go from credit card to crypto, and then you can also go from crypto to your, like, you know, USDC essentially, and eventually be able to spend that at like your retail outlets. And that's how the operationalization of social capital will lead to actually new economies being unlocked and like sort of expanding this pool, rather than just like creating a fake economy where people are just like spending money within the casino rather than sort of leaving the casino and like, you know, spending it outside.
Gotcha. So I guess you can have support emerging artists that you like, maybe on YouTube, and maybe he's on Crowdpad, right? And so you could support these people from early on, and also you could perhaps generate real utility by giving discounts or different merch, right, for different artists, right?
Yeah, so this is exactly what we were talking about earlier, right? Like real world utility and tying it into tokens. Today, the problem is that we're giving people crypto solutions for problems that they don't exactly have. So what we're trying to do at Crowdpad is like, imagine if you could token gate your fashion collection, right? And what you're doing at each token tier, the higher the tier you're in, what if you give a real world discount that's higher than a lower tier? So let's say for the top tier, you're giving a 15% discount. For the second tier, you're giving a 10% discount, so on and so forth. If you can tie in, like, you know, we're working on partnerships right now with like Calendly and things like this, where you can book in meetings, 30-minute meetings at the top tier, 15-minute meetings at the second tier, and so on. Like, you know, if you can sort of like get those real world experiences and show real world utility for these tokens, that's where the next unlock of Web3 comes. That's where mainstream adoption happens. And with what you were saying about independent creators, the reality is that today, if I wanted to hire an editor as an up-and-coming artist, I'd still have to pay them $30 per hour. And the reality is that people that are just getting started out don't monetize until a year and a half or 2 years into the, you know, creation process. So what I would do instead is give them 5 of my token, which they will anticipate as like, you know, will appreciate and value if they really believe in you as a creator, and then get into sort of like doing tasks for you. And that's the operationalization of social capital. So yeah.
Got it. So from social capital, and then we're going to, I guess, music, which is kind of sort of related. And I think our audience are familiar with SoundCloud, familiar with Spotify, and how maybe you could go into further details on how your company is building different products.
Sure.
And I guess in eventuality competing with
Yeah, I guess before I share my background, I actually want to see a show of hands of how many of you have like purchased vinyl, cassette, or CD, or like download music in your whole life. And how many of you have purchased a CD in the last 6 months? Right. It's a pretty young crowd here, of course. I can see. So I guess in terms of the background, me and my co-founders, my co-founder Chris is the co-founder of the world's first streaming services called KKBox, and I am the co-founders of QQ Music, the biggest streaming services in China. So we both found music streaming services 2 years before that we were at Spotify. So we have gone through that journey of how we could migrate, ownership of download, ownership of CD and cassette and vinyl to, okay, you don't need to own it. You just have access. You just stream the music, then you're okay, right? But I think coming to these days, we do realize that we definitely want to bring back the joy of ownership, because now that with Web3 technology, we can finally own music as a digital asset. not only is it static assets, we can continue to send additional assets to NFT owners. We think this is more like a dynamic format that we're trying to create here. And when we are set to start this company, we didn't even call ourselves a Web3 companies, because I do believe that from from Web 2 to Web 3, it's not a revolution. It won't, from Web 2 to become a Web 3 overnight. It's more like an evolution, right? We set ourselves to really targeting the 96, 97% of the 5 billion internet populations, rather than 100 million, 150 million, depends on what kind of statistics are you looking at, those crypto owners. So we want to make sure that, hey, we are building a mass market product here. Also when it comes to payment, we work with a Circle. We want to make sure that, hey, we also accept fiat currencies from around the world. We also work with Apple and Google that enables in-app purchase. We just want to make sure that this process is very smooth. We don't want to take out those people who don't have a crypto wallet. You don't have a crypto wallet? Fine. You can use your credit card, debit card, you can do in-app purchase on our platforms. At the same time, we also set to make it affordable and make it very easy, almost risk-free to transact on our platform. That's why we work on multi-chains from Ethereum to Binance to Thundercourt to Polygon. We give user choices. If we want less efficient but more popular, more expensive, less free, we can pick Ethereum, but in this one, gas free, we want, much more efficient kind of layer. Yes, you can choose Polygon. So we do give user choices. And then I want to talk about another side of my background. So before I could found a happy company, I built partnership organizations at Facebook and Instagram for 5 years across APAC. So at that time, I worked with a lot of the creators and celebrities, public figures across the region. Yes, obviously we build very strong social presence for them. They all have tens of millions of followers on the platform. However, when it comes to the questions of, do I really own those followers? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Basically, Facebook and Instagram are now Meta own those followers because they are an advertising companies. They own all those users and followers. And when it comes to monetizations, as we all know, they monetize through advertising, and the breadcrumbs goes to the creators. I think from the time when I left, Meta, I realized that, okay, I need to do something for the creators where they can really benefit from what they have built and they can make their living. And I think I have heard recently a famous saying, it's fun to have hundreds of millions of followers on the platform, but it's the engagement that they abuse. So I think that's also the belief that we have, at our happy company, and we really try to help creators to make their living on the platform.
Got it. Thank you. So, we have from social to music, and then now we're on to gaming, which is another, I think, one of the first product market fit in the entire crypto aspect. People are quite familiar with tokens. Well, before it's called crypto, right? There's different type of virtual currencies that gamers are used to, trading skins. It's one of the biggest industry in the world that people, I think, have not known. So why don't you talk about, I guess, what the products you're building and how you see the connections between what you're building to, I guess, crossing to the masses.
Sure. I think when it comes to blockchain, as I said earlier, I think it's basically experimenting with social and financial experiments based on a community. So you're experimenting on a community. And what that means is, because of that, whatever the returns, you need to share with the community. And for a lot of the experiments, you need the community to be part of it for the ecosystem to grow. And you can do all that with a game. Like the game economy and the social side of gaming is fit for designing everything you want to try on on crypto and blockchain. So I just thought like making a game to try these things out would be the best way. And then like, okay, what experiments we want to do on our games, or what experiments are people interested moving to a Web3 community or Web3 society? So basically, we're starting off with identity, like, because if you go to like teens and 20s in America, in Korea, and I don't know whether it's the same case in Japan, like most people have like 8 to 10 Google accounts, like one for YouTube, like one for social media, one for the emails, one for the, and these are all like they're separate identities. It's the same person with various identities, and this is how the young generation are moving with just one thing, identity. And like sometimes they want to expose who you are. Sometimes you want to hide who you are. So like, like for instance, this is why a lot of the people, kids are moving away from Facebook, because your parents are there. Going from there, so like with Web3 identity, for us, it's just a MetaMask wallet, because that's free. You can get it. Anyone can get it. You can add like a PFP NFT. It's okay if it's a cheap one. You can mint your own picture if you want to, and you can have tons of these. But the point is, where for us, there's a lot of user data based on Web3 activities that are starting to pile on your wallet. And like you can own those. You can decide what are the important data that goes into your wallet. You can decide what just stays in the database and are shared with everyone, which could be Facebook, which could be Instagram, which could be Twitter or Google, who's basically making money out of your information and data. So that's just the starting point. But like there are so many building blocks that can basically change or be different to what it is right now. A few examples is like, for instance, real estate. Like for instance, like if you're buying a piece of, if you're buying a house in the center of Tokyo, I'll go with center of Seoul because I'm more familiar. There's the Han River. And if you buy a house right next to it, that's probably the most important property. If it's close to an urban work office area, it'll make it more expensive. If it's right next to an important school district, you want to send your kids there, it's more expensive. And if you think about it, this is all about time. Right? You want to go to the office quickly. You want to go to the Han River and run quickly. You want to go, you want to send your kids to the best school that's close to you. So this is all about time. But like if you move that to a digital society, it's a click away. Like let's say if you're owning a piece of land in a digital game or a digital world over there, and everything else is centered around here. This is physical. This is what you see. But if you're moving from there to here, it should be like from a click of a button. So then the value proposition of real estate on digital world and in real life suddenly changes, and the whole value proposition changes. So in our game, we want to experiment with all these different hypotheses and prove what different values can be created in what people call a metaverse or a digital world or a Web3 world, and see which ones work and which one doesn't. And we're building building blocks around it. But if there are any other building blocks that are being made by other companies, and we can just interoperably plug it into our game, we can experiment with that too. And I think that's the philosophy of Web3 games, because we're building up the whole ecosystem together, and we're not just pioneering everything by ourselves. And that is the essence of the Web3 decentralized society that we're building together. And in addition to that, like everyone's like saying, there's a real life that we're living in. Why so focused on the digital space? The thing is, people who are living this present life, whether you like it or not, you're focused on your phone or your PC monitor probably like 8 hours to 12 hours a day. So like literally you're already living in that digital space without knowing, right? You think that's real life, but everything is happening in that PC that's connected to the web, where most large companies are owning all the data that you're consuming and making every day. So Spacebar is a game that wants to experiment with all these different value proposition and then build out separate building blocks so all the different and various Web3 communities can utilize moving forward. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So, we have all the consumer-facing applications that approaching to the masses, but like the internet that we enjoy today, everything is still run on infrastructure, which is quite important. And one of the most valuable companies in the world is Google, and started with a search engine. And what they're doing is basically a data aggregator, and also basically a crawler that building on top, so you could instantly search all the information that you need. But they're hyper centralized, right? They select different information that you see with their AI engine, in which the data are controlled. Usagi is building a very, very interesting product. Why don't you talk about the company that you're building and how you're solving this piece, and also on decentralization, how you see the world going forward?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So basically, we got like 5 co-founders, and basically where we're getting started is like one of our co-founder called DIY God. He's a well-known community developer that are actually working on the original RSS protocols, and he created an open source project called RSS Hub. I don't know if you guys used it before. So basically, what he's doing is like, this is a node, but it's like a Web2 version of distributed service that it can cross and spider the lot of Web2 website, even including like Twitter and Facebook and other social medias. Like, they can cross them and generate RSS feed from it. That is because, like, from his point of view, that he do believe that information should be able to free flows. That is why we gather together, and we do believe that information should be distributed with a more reasonable kind of way. And we do invented a concept called the platformless media. That is where we actually getting from. So basically, at the beginning, RS3, we designed a more developer-friendly protocols that developers can integrate and use it. And we do have a lot of community-driven clients. So the creators can actually generate their blocks. After they generate, the users can subscribe it. This is like basically the original RSS model. But after that, when we actually dive into the whole Web3 industry, we do believe this is something that really worth to keep trying on from it. So after that, we're starting to design our distributed nodes, and we're starting to get trying to crawl the information from. It's actually, you need to crawl it. You just set up a node and just receiving the every broadcast, so you can know the new transactions. And we do design a distributed database that actually. No matter where you are and where the developer is from, they can actually index the information that we currently support. And since that, we do, at the beginning, we do actually made a little proof of concept, and it's pretty hard to teach the end user what it is. So we're actually making a file stuff called RSS bio, or like page 3. It's keep changing names. Now it's called Cheers bio. So basically, once you sign with your wallet, the RSS nodes will be able to gather in all your NFTs and all your member posts and extra, and we generate a profile for you. Basically, back in that time, it was like we are the only one who's doing this kind of stuff, and that is where Coinbase find us, and they lead us. Coinbase, Dragonfly, and Fabric, a lot of cool backers that actually just gather around, and including a lot of chains, because they want we to support their chains to we be able to index it. So after that, things goes really crazy. We've been growing really quick from 5 people company. Now we are around 40 people that from all over the world. And even better, it's like we do believe that eventually we will be able to making something that really can help people to decide. I like it here. I like this platform. This can help me. I do like the user experience from here. I will just blogging here. I'll just tweeting and
putting our contents here. Even one day I just don't like it, I'll just decide to move. And with these whole standard in the Web3 industry, like people can be able to choose what is a good one and what is it should be. So yeah, this is where we all the way came down, and it's only about 1 year and a half. It's actually really crazy on this whole Web3 industry that every day we got coming up new technologies, and every day they just keep changing it. But we're always trying to keep up with the tide, and always trying to keep supporting more kind of data that developers can be able to get used from it. Yeah, pretty much that'll be all for me from here. Yeah, thank you. Got it, thank you. Last but not least, we have, so similar to Usagi, what he's building, there are quite a lot of tools that need to be built, right? For example, if you're building a game, you don't want to build a game engine yourself, the Unity or Unreal Engine, right? So you need quite a lot of infrastructure and different developer tools. And so last company, Yuko, what he's building is a very interesting DAO for, I guess, different SDKs and developer tools for companies to build on top of.
Thank you. In my opinion, I think there are only two kinds of applications in the world. The first one is helping people killing time, just like TikTok and Douyin. And the second one is helping people to earn money, to make money. And I think TikTok, this kind of application, that make both of them will be best and will be winner. And the interesting fact is that TikTok, the idea of TikTok is born at this street in the Kokusai Body of Okinawa. And in 2015, March, we held a company conference in a little izakaya just nearby, and at that time the CEO of ByteDance and we held a small conference, and we decided to move the recommendation, recommend engine to the video field. So we decided to design our video streaming application that's called Douyin, and the app was released after 1.5 years later. So I think there is something similar happening in the Web3 industry right now, but it's not the change of the information flow. I and my workmates, we have the vision of our company, ByteDance, was to change the information flow of the massive users. All of our applications include CodeforDAO, include Douyin, and the TikTok is doing the same thing. Yeah, we are doing the same thing. We change the information flow from the search engine to the end user, but make it offsite. We create a recommendation to free people whatever they want. So basically, the 10 years we're doing the same thing. All of the apps is doing the same thing. But I can see there is similar change in Web3 industry. We are now treating our users' digital property as one kind of assets, and this kind of evolution never happens in internet industry. So I think the most important thing is right here, and we are going to do make listeners trust among people who don't know each other, who don't are familiar all around the world. So I think this is the basic fundamental of the decentralized society. And so for that reason, I built CodeforDAO, and we actually built a set of open source projects. Most of them are contracts that contains all kinds of applications. We make rich feature contracts, just like Snapshot X3. Is there anyone here ever used Snapshot before? Do you know Snapshot? With open pools of DAOs? Yeah. All right. Yeah. Snapshot is actually an off-chain service. It's not an on-chain service. It's not doing everything in the contract, but only an off-chain service. But Snapshot is doing a StarkNet Layer 2 solution called Snapshot X. And every single abstraction X is doing transactions and the proposals and the managing proposals on chain, on the layer 2, on the Starknet. And at the same time, they manage the vote contract, they manage the verified verification of the layer 1, the X-8 mainnets. So their contract is just like us. We are doing the same thing. We demand the power of the layer 1, the ETH mainnet's power, but at the same time, we remove everything from the option service to contracts. So in that contract, we actually making everything happens exactly on chain instead of the traditional way we do it, just like Web2 companies. So I think that will be the fundamental technical structure for the future, for the ideal decentralized society way. And this is what we are doing CodeforDAO. If you guys are interested, you can check out my GitHub repo. We have released the contracts in Solidity and the Starknet Spiral language for about half a year, and we are developing a bunch of different kinds of contracts, basically covering all kinds of stuff, all kinds of logic that startups needs. So if you're interested, you can just use CodeforDAO's contract to put your own stuff online. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I guess opining on that, right? So I think the entire crypto market acts like a Lego, right? That's why this is also applicable to the SaaS business that we have. Why the capital raising, I guess, timeline has shrinked way faster, and companies can grow a lot faster, is because of these building blocks, right? These essential blocks that developers don't have to build everything from scratch, but rather they can go on GitHub and download these open source engines, right? There's AI modules, computer vision, everything, right? So you can just download and basically aggregate them together. And I think crypto is actually making these even more, even easier to do that, right? So I guess jumping to next question on decentralization, right? So right now the information flow, it's basically processes creating, storing, distributing, and rendering a specific event or project, right? But the problem is actually not the information itself. It's because of there's too much information, right? So you have a long tail of information that people don't want to see. And so that's what the social media is doing, is just sanctioning on one aspect and then have you focus on that. And then if you want to be in that corner, then, well, pay up, right? So that's what centralization is happening. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that, right? So even if the user owns their own data, but if no one sees it, what's good for that, right? So how do you guys think of that?
For our song, we are kind of like taking a semi-custody approach, like to the point that we are not putting everything on chain, but we do give user options. For example, you no longer want to keep your assets on our song. We do allow you to export, to a chain. At the same time, we also allow users to do that Discord, community, on our platform as well. So one day you want to export your community, we do allow them to export their community to Discord. I think to me, the most important thing is like give options to users.
Got it. I think that's very important.
I think there's two important parts here. One is about how data is hierarchical, but people don't treat it like that. What I mean by that is, like, for instance, there are data that is more valuable and there are data that is less valuable. So for instance, if it's Stephen Curry, which is a famous basketball player, talking about something on Twitter, there's more followers and, it's targeting a basketball fan group and blah, blah, blah. And there's all these data that adds towards that. And thus, if somebody is utilizing Stephen Curry and he posts for any kind of advertisement on that account, and that is coupled with sports and thus can be more valuable. While if it's someone, a very, very normal person, a regular person, and does a tweet, doesn't have so many followers, or doesn't have much social reach, then his data or what he's posting has basically less value. So there's all the data, if you think about it, there is a hierarchy that people kind of disregard. And usually it's like centralized companies like Google and Facebook that aggregates all this data and basically monetize out of it. And this is called data arbitrage. While in Web3, I think this, so the next part which is different is basically like there's a massive saturation because like the internet's been out for decades and decades, and there's a heap pile of data that's being stacked up. Like just for instance, like if you want to start YouTube and become an influencer now compared to that in 10 years ago, the environment is totally different. If you're uploading, if you're a game developer and uploading a mobile game on the App Store 10 years ago, and you want to do that now, getting the audience is totally different. So there's market saturation. But like Web3, I think it's in some way restarting. Because it's there's so many ways you can iterate on how data can be stored and used, and based on that, everyone will be able to understand. Will need to understand what data they're building on Web3 and how that can accrue value down the road, and what data they have or they can stack up that can be important, and those that are not. And the regular person would probably provide those data through their wallet to some kind of an aggregator, which is like most likely like a Google of these days. They'll be able to aggregate all that information and arbitrage and monetize out of this. But some people won't want to do that. They may, because they have so much important data and they understand that data so well that they'll be able to monetize out of this or basically utilize it in a way that they want to. So I think this is a massive movement that's moving away from Web 2 to Web 3. And based on this, users can start deciding on how this data can be used and like define what is important. And one case which I want to stir up also, it is like, for instance, a CryptoPunk or a Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT is priced very, very high right now. And like a user can have a Bored Ape Yacht Club and everyone will think he's loaded because he has a Bored Ape Yacht Club. That NFT doesn't really say much about the user itself. So the value is actually in the NFT. However, like if you think about it, you're the one who's choosing that NFT. And let's say you're a really, really important figure. Let's say you're the president of the USA and you bought a really, really cheap NFT and you're utilizing that for your digital identity. Would that NFT be the same value of like 0.05 ETH when he minted it? Because it's not. Like the moment it's the president of the USA holding that NFT, then that NFT's value skyrockets through the roof. So based on user activity and the interactions of these kinds of assets and its data, all this can capsize and change. And I think all this is going to change in Web3 and how people perceive data, and we're just at the starting point. So this is how I kind of see how all this changes, because then you don't know exactly where you're on the long tail or in the starting point of where the data accrue happens. Yeah.
I think that's super interesting. Like, for me, I obviously don't think of it as much as you're thinking about it from the Web3 kind of lens, but actually rolling it back a little bit to Web2, right? What is the segmentation between sort of your social graph, which Facebook helped you capture? So it's like, who are your friends, what are they posting about, where are they going, etc. And then there's your interest graph, which is what TikTok did, and like ByteDance basically. What is your For You page kind of like look like? And then you have also your knowledge graph, right? So what are the things that you're interested in learning about? And I think that in Web3, we're going to see an intersection almost of your knowledge graph, your interest graph, and your social graph. And a lot of it is going to come through what you were just talking about on the wallet pieces and your credentialing on chain. And the reality is that the existing state of what we have in terms of like accruing value out of the data that we show on chain is just not there. How do you go from contributing in one DAO to another DAO where you don't know anybody, right? How do you show that the decisions that you voted on within one particular DAO, the data that you accrue from that, can be used to your benefit in another DAO going like, hey, I know you don't know me, but here's proof that I've done something in another community. So that's data that's really interesting, and I think that is at the intersection of sort of the knowledge graph, the interest graph, and the social graph. Yeah.
Okay, I think the data flow is decided by the revenue model. Most of the revenue of TikTok, for example, is advertisement. So big companies use free data to train the advertisement model to make more advertisement show so they get more money. That is the basic thing. If we want to change the data flow of the Web3 applications, we have going to change the revenue model of Web3 apps. Yeah, but actually most of Web3 startups, when making applications, they have no revenue at all. So we have no opportunity to change the data flow. I think that this is my opinion, yeah.
Got it. So I guess we still have to utilize the existing construct of social media for attention, but what Web3 is about is, I guess, bringing that optionality, bring back to the user, and they can switch on and off whenever they want. Right? So I guess going to the next question, if we track all the wallets there are in like Ether, Solana, and we're basically at the 1995 moments of internet, right? And then we're still like slowly taking off, I think. So the user is still not at a critical mass. There's still quite a lot of hurdles to go through. You guys are building the future right now. What do you think is the hurdle, and also what's stopping the user from coming in?
I think it's purely like, it's so interesting, right? Like we sit here, we're talking about fiat, on-ramps, off-ramps, DAOs, on-chain credentialing, governance, blah, blah. And like the reality is normal people don't understand what the hell that is, right? And the second we start tearing down barriers from saying, oh, here are all of the walls that we're going to put in front of you, and go to, here's how you can use it in your day-to-day life, that's when you see an adoption from the mainstream. So as utopian as we think we might be living in this particular society, and that everyone should just understand what the hell it means when someone has like a messed up like messed up PFP as their like identity or whatever, and you just expect people to get what that is. I think breaking down those barriers and like really getting into the depth of the utility of the space, as opposed to just like the fluff, the jargon, and like all of this kind of stuff, that's where we really see an unlock. And for me, that comes through a lot of implying like real world utility from the products that we're using. So partnerships, especially for all of our companies with like Web2 companies that are already doing things in the real world, in my opinion, is what is going to bridge that gap that we have to onboard the next 100 million, billion, whatever keyword you want to use, kind of a thing. And that is how I see mainstream adoption coming in, and sort of spending time in those conversations one-to-one and really be willing to put in that non-scalable effort and be like, this is how Web3 can change your life, is pretty impactful. Because if you look at, I'm sure you guys saw the A16Z report that came out on the average income that Web3 creators make as opposed to Web2 creators. Web3 creators are in the cents and Web3 creators are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, obviously because of differences in scale. But imagine what even monetizing from day one could do for an artist, right? People that spend years of their lives having to decide between the thing that they're passionate about and the thing that pays their bills. If you could let them monetize from day one, it's a whole different ballgame. So showing them that would be super essential to mainstream adoption, yeah.
I think to me, I echo your point that there are a lot of jargons, in Web3. Obviously, everybody knows what is NFTs, but I bet over 90% of the Indian population doesn't know what NFT is. But if I ask you, do you know what Wi-Fi stands for? How many of you can really tell me what Wi-Fi stands for? But we're using it every day, right? So Wi-Fi actually stands for wireless fidelity, by the way. I think when we build our company, in fact, we have in mind that with the vision that if my 76-year-old mom would come to me and want to buy a piece from our platform, that would be the mass adoptions. I think making it very easy to understand, very easy to make payments, very easy to really understand the user propositions. Why I want to go to Web3 instead of staying on Web2. That must be a clear user benefit and propositions. And I think we are getting there.
For me, I think we're at a beginning of a innovation cycle. And when I say that, if somebody asked me in 2006 when I was making WAP games for featured phones, what the hurdle was, back then I would say, oh, carriers don't understand anything right now. And they basically are the threshold for uploading a game into a phone. And I guess a lot of you don't know what a feature phone looks like anymore, right? And for me, looking back, because we've just passed the mobile gaming saturation point, and then entering into Web3 and blockchain games, I don't think the technological hurdles are the real hurdles. I think it's really the builders or people who are jumping into the space lacking both the imagination and the logic. So it's both that needs to meet at the same time, because you're innovating, you're basically disrupting and changing. We need to change everything that was written before that seems to be the rule. And the top guys that you're talking to right now, probably if you think about the top mobile game companies of now, whether it's I don't know, Sony with its PlayStation, I guess the mobile, there's all these NCSoft, EA, Zynga that have become the mobile game giants now. They were not existent in mobile gaming until 2013. Most of that innovation happened with these indie developers that were making Candy Crush or making Clash Royale and Clash of Clans and Voodoo Jumps and Angry Birds of Rovio. And they were basically adapting to all the changes that were happening with all the smartphone innovation. So what is happening with the blockchain gaming or blockchain or Web3 innovation? There's just so much to unlearn. And I don't think you should be looking up to those who are innovating the Web2 space. You should be questioning them and unlearning them and basically imagining how things can change, but at the same time adapting logically on what you can build that links to what can be the future. And I think that's the lack of the two combined is the biggest hurdle that I'm seeing in Web3.
Yeah. So to be honest, from my point of view, I'll say maybe the market is also something that really currently we've been facing on. You see, the market always goes waves and the waves, and we currently maybe as a bearish kind of part. But
Imagine like when the X Infinity there, they create like hundreds of thousands of jobs that actually in like South Asians that their locals like they can creating like around $100 values that per day by just like interact with their gamified whole ecosystem. And you can also imagine like the next very astonishing stuff coming out. Maybe like, for example, I'll say maybe it's OpenSea, because like, to be honest, this is where every famous from the original Web2 world that actually step into it. Like we can see like Currys and like Shacks that actually getting their NFTs, and they even get their like ENS. So this is something that we think that when once the marketing goes a little bit bearish, a lot of people are holding back. This is because once the revenues didn't come out, they will think about is it worth it, or like because with the current stage we're still facing on, it's like it's still got a really high leverage that we have to step in, and then we can get started with the whole Web3 experience. But anyway, I do believe in this kind of cases, like we are waiting for next big thing. So big thing that coming out that shows to the original, like the people not in this Web3 industry, that this is something that really worth to try on. Like they are buying NFTs for the avatars is only because this is good looking. I do believe for the famous people, they do actually thinking this is something that is really worth us to own it. This is where it's getting interesting, that once the NFT is no longer for the pump and dump, this is where NFT is starting to showing their real values. No matter it's like for the ownership or the stylish. Yeah, pretty much that's what I'm talking.
Okay. I'd like to share several of my perspectives on the technical side about the massive adoption. The first one is we cannot separate the key and the lock of the wallet at this moment, and this is so important. So why we need abstract account, it's so-called AA, and there are so few chains that support AA at this moment, and one of them is Starnet. But most of the EVM compatible chains are not supported AA, so we can't separate from the key, separate key from the lock. So if the user, like your aunt or your neighbors, lost her numbers, so she just lost her all of her assets. This is unbelievable in the traditional applications, and we work on so many complaints about this. So I think AA is one of the most important things we have to solve before the massive adoption, before we really buying ads for our applications or for our games for the end users that will reach the entire society. And the second one is SBT, Soulbound Token. I think Soulbound Token is a fundamental private token that we can build non-financial applications. That is we are going to build applications for users, but not investors. Yeah, so I think we are going to say something just like build upon SBT and provide an high abstraction account technical structure in the next few years. Yeah, that will be the next generation applications built upon Web3, I think. Thank you.
Very interesting. I guess we have a lot of questions, but I guess we're running out of time. So I'm gonna just have one question asked from the audience. If you guys have any question that you guys want to ask the panelists. Anyone want to ask any questions? No? Okay. Sounds good. We got right on time. Right. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, guys.